want them to come in, they're like, oh, but it's nice outside.
I know. Exactly. But I'm sniffing around. Can't you see I'm sniffing out here? Okay, so it's been a little bit of a break, which has been fine because you're in a good place. So you've been dealing with, we've been really honing in on your kind of that perfectionism and stress and trying to control your environment and the connection to wanting to please your dad. And we've also kind of talked about the codependency, you know, that whole thing between your mom and your dad and trying to, you know, really promote yourself as, am I good enough? Am I good enough? And you're like, you know, right?
Yep.
And where are you at now?
Okay, so hopefully I can remember all these things I wanted to tell you.
It's okay.
First of all, I went to the rheumatologist last week. I hadn't been there for 6 months, and the last time I was there, my blood work was all over the place. And I wanted to reduce my prednisone, but instead I walked out, you know, and he's like, you need to have a bone marrow biopsy, and you need to go see a gastroenterologist, and you need to do this, this, and this. And yeah, and he didn't reduce my prednisone. So,
okay, so hold on a second. Did we do a protocol? Did we do a round in there?
Not in that one.
Okay, but when we did the last round, it was a massive flare-up. Right? And I was like, clearly it's not the food, and clearly it's not your weight. Yep. Right? The HCG absolutely was kind of flaring it up, but don't you agree? We kind of honed in on the stress. Like, this is definitely in the brain. Stress.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So
I had an appointment this past week, and all my blood work was normal, and we haven't changed anything. And even my doctor was like, everything's normal. What are you doing different? I said, nothing.
Hold on. Did you tell him that you've been working on stress? That you've actually been trying to work and focus on that? That'd be worth sharing.
No. I should have shared that with him and his PA because that is and I thought of that on my way home that I should have shared with them that, you know, I've just been doing all this counseling and really trying to reduce my stress load. And so they said, well, now we're going to add another medicine, another RA medicine, and we're going to start to reduce your prednisone. And I was ecstatic because to me, that means, it was just a big thing for me to be able to start on this road to reducing the prednisone. And,
and to give yourself enough time with no change, but just this one focus to see how how your body has responded in a positive way. That it's kind of healing itself in a way, or it's not. Anyways, it's not the food, because you keep in mind, you've been eating everything.
I've been eating everything. And when I went to the GI doctor, you know, I didn't have any celiac disease or anything like that that they were looking for. So, but when I went in there, I remember walking down the hall to the doctor's office all loud and proud and, you know, I don't give a shit, you know, just kind of happy with life. And I got on the scale and I about peed my pants. 249. I've never weighed this much in my whole entire life, not even when I was pregnant. Mm-hmm. And I was just a little taken aback, kind of like oh, shit.
Well, were you surprised because you feel so good?
Yeah, I was surprised. Yeah. I was like, huh.
I know. Telling you, when people have that negative emotional response, it's far worse. You haven't been attached to it or focused on it or emotional about it, and it was surprising.
Yeah, it was very surprising. Yeah. And of course, you know, the doctor and the PA were really honed in on my weight. We really need to get you off the prednisone. Your weight's sky high. And so she said to me, the PA said, when you are hungry and you feel like eating, you need to just try not to eat. And I just smiled at her, thinking, whatever.
I would have gone, oh, you're funny. Yeah. That's cute.
Yeah, if I'm hungry, I'm going to eat. But I'm not going to go into that with you because
Woo, that doesn't sound so good. She doesn't really understand how the brain works with stress under food, because she basically told you to do what's the cause of a lot of problems.
Right.
Not realizing you just encouraged a binge.
Yep. Yep. And it was funny because as I was setting on the exam table, there's a full-length mirror that if I look to the side, there's a full-length mirror, and after I knew I weighed 249, and I'm looking in that mirror, I'm like, oh, you really are huge. Huh. I hadn't really noticed that lately. And so it took me aback a little bit, but I was able just to, I had an hour and a half, 2-hour drive home from the doctor, and I was able to just kind of work through all of that, and no, you're not going to change anything. Yes, if your weight goes to 300 pounds, that's fine, because it's possible it will do that.
Yeah, and we want to let it kind of naturally find its own point of homeostasis right now.
Right.
You do. It is important. If you're eating to hunger and you're doing it honestly, and that you're doing your part, so you have to let the body adjust under the influence of these steroids,
Yeah.
And there's no point in trying to stop it. Your body is adjusting and adapting. And again, as they get rid of this prednisone, it's going to do its own thing. Your best bet is to just continue to ignore it. And it'll eventually hit a stability point. Whether it's 300 pounds or you're back down to 200, the key for you is letting the body do its own work. As it becomes stabilized, that's at that point is where they really should be doing a lot of blood work, is when it's stable. So that's the hard part, is when your blood, it sounds like everything looks good, but your body, and this is the hard part, because we aren't so focused on your weight, you have no idea if it's been this way for months. I mean, you could have, maybe you've been here for like 3 months straight.
Right. Yeah, I have no idea. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of something for you to keep in mind. Even though you're all of a sudden made aware, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden you just gained weight in one day,
Right.
No.
Yeah, and it was just so funny how, when I was walking down this hall and there was people eating lunch and they would look over and watch me walk down the hall, I was like, yep, this is Michelle. You just look if you want to. And then I go in and I weighed 249 pounds. I was like, holy shit. I don't know. It was just so funny.
Well, it's a big deal that none of those before would have been huge triggers to shame.
Oh, yeah.
Huge triggers before to survival mode. I have to do something now.
Right.
The impulsivity, right? That's a big deal. I think where this is such a big deal is you can tell the difference between how you would have responded 6 months ago and how you're responding now, to the whole thing, versus it's not an emotional thing for you anymore.
Yeah. And a year and a half ago, as I was walking down that hall, I would have thought, oh my God, they're all staring at me. Yeah. They think I look like shit. They think I'm fat. They think I'm too tall. They think I'm this. They think I'm that. Yeah.
So you've really gone through phases of it, like the phase of it being about your worth emotionally, and then the phase of this is about my health and survival. Now it's really none of it.
Yep.
Yeah, because you're can you tell the body's doing a good job? It's doing a good job.
Yeah, and I've been having a tremendous amount of neck and back pain, and I've been thinking for the last month or so, if I did a round and took some weight off, it might help some of this neck and back pain. But I don't know. I'm going to try walking and stretching and stuff first. Yeah. And then when they said they would reduce my prednisone, I was like, I just need to settle into this next 6 months as they month by month reduce my meds and just see what my body's going to do, see how the neck and back pain changes, and it was just
I wouldn't prescribe the HCG protocol for neck and back pain for anybody, but I would prescribe yoga.
Yeah, and I've been doing a lot of stretching and stuff, and I need to look in. I know I've got a video on back pain, yoga for back pain.
Yeah, and there's so much stuff on YouTube. Instructors going through an entire class for helping back pain and hip pain and opening up your hips. And yeah, the last thing, again, notice your first thought was to do around, thinking it was the weight's the problem.
Right.
No, it's not. It's posture. It's your posture. Of course, your weight can exacerbate the posture, but it's a postural problem.
Yep.
Doing a round of the protocol is a lot of sacrifice and risk. It's a gamble that your back pain is going to go away. I mean, I have significant back pain. Is losing weight going to change it?
Yeah.
You know, we can blame it on the weight. That's what everybody does. People love blaming everything on weight. But, you know, yeah. I'm glad you took a step back from that thought, because that's just that thought in and of itself. If you had said, Robin, I think I should do a round, I would have said, no, you're crazy. Not for back pain. That's you're relapsing.
Yep. And that's what, to be able to, when I have those thoughts, to step back and say, okay, let's think this through.
Yeah.
Or, the other thing that happened recently is, I can't even remember what I was upset about, but or what happened, but my husband got really irritated with me and told me I was being controlling, and he said, you're just like your dad, the apple didn't fall from the tree, and, you know, he's like, he was pissed. And, of course, then I went into, oh, my God, he's such an asshole. I cannot believe he said that to me. I'm not my dad.
Yeah, but how many times have you and I had the conversations where you're like, holy shit, I'm just like my dad?
I know. And normally I would have been pissed at him for a few days.
Yeah.
But I just kind of sat with that and digested it for about 30 minutes. And I went back and I said, I am really sorry. You are completely right. I am acting like him. I don't want to be like him. I am really trying to not to change that behavior, and I'm just so sorry.
Oh my God, that's a big deal. That right there, that takes humility. So notice what happens when you have that humility to admit and to at least not defend yourself, and to recognize, and to don't you agree? It takes quite a bit of humility to do what you just did, and the benefit is so awesome.
Yeah, it was so hard for me to go in and swallow that.
Yeah, but you knew it was true.
I was wrong. You were right. But then afterwards, he's like, okay, let's, I just want you to see what you're doing. You're not a bad person, Michelle. I just want you to see what you're doing. Like, okay. And then, it's it just felt so much better afterwards.
Yeah, relieving. There's not as much tension. You probably didn't have the urge to go put something in your mouth, to go eat.
Yeah, not at all. Yeah. I crawled in the chair with my husband, and, we sat and watched TV, and
you felt
I went to bed early. And
you probably felt more connected. And more like we're vulnerable with each other, and the willingness to admit that is like, I'm changing. I'm not going to do this anymore. And I do need to know when I'm doing it, because I need to be aware of why in my mind, so I can change the beliefs and thought patterns.
Yes.
Because you don't want to do this. You don't want to be this way. Doesn't help anybody.
Yep.
It helps the ego. It helps what you get out of being a jerk,
Yes. Yes. It was life-changing for me, to just literally, it's like swallowing this mouthful of food that's too big, and it's hard to get down, and once you get it down, you're like, okay.
It's a big deal. That's amazing to me. That's like, and now we're recovering. This is the humility aspect of it in the moment. The fact that he also recognized it for what it is and said, here's what's going on, was really awesome on his part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he's not enabling it.
Right. In our marriage, just, we've been married for almost 32 years, and our marriage just keeps getting stronger and stronger. And there was a time when my weight would have, completely come between us on both of our parts. Mm-hmm. And for my part, I can finally see that he loves me no matter what I weigh. Mm-hmm. It's the person I bring to the relationship, or it's the soul I bring to the relationship. Yeah. And for him, he realizes how much I just struggle internally, or have struggled with everything, and for him just to love my soul
and to care about your well-being, not care about him it's really about your
Right.
well-being. That's true love.
Yep.
And it's like he's dedicated to your, not to his happiness. It's really he's dedicated to loving you and wanting you to have your happiness. Not at the loss of his happiness, but that he really does care about you as a person. Even if you were, let's just say, to get divorced, he would still be there for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He cares about you.
Yep.
Yeah. That's true love.
Yep. Yeah, and it's so incredible. He just keeps talking about, let's take a trip here, let's take a trip there. And like, that's not him.
Yeah. Well, how does it feel to hear that and to know that it's not when you lose the weight?
Yes. Yes. So
It's like right now, what?
Yes.
Nothing has to change. Nothing has to be done. There's no assignments that you're behind on. There is no pressure or finish line to lose weight to do it. You could go today. You could go next week. Let's just do it. Yeah. How's that feel?
Yep. Oh my God, it's so liberating. And like when we went on the ice fishing trip, we had the trip scheduled before Christmas, and so for Christmas he bought me like bib coveralls and a coat and everything. And like I'm sure it was, well, no, I can't say what I'm sure about with him because I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But he went and bought me, 3XL coveralls, and then said, I don't know if these are going to fit. You'll just have to try them, and if they don't, we'll stop on the way on our trip, and you can exchange them. Yeah, just incredible.
Can you believe that it's like this whole time you thought everything was reliant on you being thin? Everything.
Yeah.
Can you see now why if you feel that way and you're looking at things with such and closed-mindedness and like such tunnel vision, why the pressure on your food to be perfect and super restrictive, how primal that is and how survival oriented that is, how and why you would be so impulsive too around the binging, because you're becoming so threatened by food that you become really sensitive to those primal urges to binge as well, especially if it isn't perfect, right? And so that whole entire way of existing is Mad Hatter.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And it's not because there's something wrong with you. It's because of your belief systems that are making your thinnerness and the fear of fatterness basically the most important thing to life. So that's when people have eating disorders, it's an indication of that. It's an indication of how survival, how much they rely on thinnerness and feel threatened by fatterness at a life and death level, and how that pressurizes their relationship with food. And that pressurized relationship with food creates this, again, fight or flight reaction to food being the threat. And so you have to control food because it is so threatening, right? And it becomes everything. It becomes all you think about because food is truly life and death. It is the most important, along with water, right? Important survival need. So when you feel food is threatened, it's like, well, yeah, you're kind of creating the conditions that promote this in our survival mechanisms. So are you really insane, or is this a manifestation of something that has been hardwired into our system because of how primal and necessary food is to survive? And and so you can see when you have all these food issues, no one is questioning the desire to be thinner is the issue, because it's so brainwashed into an unquestionable truth in our culture. They don't look at that. So it makes it really hard to understand eating disorders. People just see these people being explosive with food and being highly obsessive compulsive around dieting and their exercise, and they think that the manifestation of those activities are the actual disorder, when they're not looking at the fear of death around being overweight or obese and where that comes from, which is, I think, fundamental to recovery. If you're going to recover from an eating disorder, you got to stop looking at the food and your impulsiveness to it and this obsessive fear of food. Those are, to me, like, of course, that's what you would do. To me, that's not weird.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if you truly believe that your parents' love, your husband's loyalty, the success of your business, your community's respect and positivity towards you is completely reliant on your thinnerness and attractiveness, it would make sense then why you would be so completely obsessed about dieting. And from there, it creates that restriction or constriction in your survival with food, which creates this impulsivity to hide it, hoard it, keep it, etc. So it's amazing to me, like freaking amazing when people come out of it, because in order to come out of that, because it's taken over that life and death, I mean, to the degree that you were in it and the degree I was in it and the degree most of my clients are in it, it is life and death to let this go. Your brain has really under such a level of threat around gaining weight or not being able to lose weight or letting go of diets. It is so threatening that it feels like you're going to die to recover. So you have to go into what that means and the sense of death that you have and the connection it has to rejection, abandonment, disapproval, loss, being alone. That's what's really at the bottom of this, is complete isolation from humanity. That's kind of like where that primal pack animal thing heads. If you're not thin, you're going to be alone. Which is ultimately where most of your issues stem from. Not just thinness, it's kind of like the perfectionism in your business.
Right.
It's all kind of the same symptom of the same, insecurity within yourself. So the goal here is that you feel that you can handle being alone. If in the end you are alone, is it worth, in order to be free from this kind of torturous survival state of mind that is really perpetually uncomfortable, there's no comfort in it. Because that's how the brain's wired when you're in survival mode, is to be really sensitive to discomfort. So you live in discomfort. That's why it's depressing. That's why it's so impulsive, because you're constantly trying to get out of feeling like shit. Right? Again, survival mode is a way to get out of feeling like shit. So when you're in it, you're constantly feeling bad is always there, and you're constantly trying to move out of it. So anyway, to get out of it, you have to go into, well, if that's the way, if I have to be uncomfortable permanently, that means the suffering that I've lived in trying to get rid of that discomfort is gone. Because there is a point where the suffering of trying to get out of that discomfort is far worse than the discomfort. It's sad. It is sad. It is depressing. It is hopeless. It is dark. And I think this process for you has been that I always have that darkness. It's always there, and I gotta do better. I gotta do better. I gotta do better. This needs to be done perfectly. And it's like, face the darkness. Get into the darkness, because if you can tolerate that darkness, if you can actually exist in that darkness without running, then you don't have this constant need to be, first of all, afraid, controlling, impulsive. It gives you that space to think if you're not afraid of that discomfort. And so what I found amazing for me is in the acceptance of that permanent discomfort. And that's why I say it's permanent if you go into it, because that's what it feels like. The brain is using that sense of permanence as if it's death, because death is permanent, right? And so the permanence of that discomfort, if you stop trying to remove it, is you really have to go into, well, I'm going to feel like shit permanently. Well, is feeling like shit the way I'm feeling it? Whether it's I'm going to be rejected permanently, I'm going to be alone permanently, no one's going to like me permanently, I'll never get married permanently, I'll never have kids permanently. You go into that, right? All of those fear thoughts, ultimately, are those things as bad as a life of complete and total suffering perpetually? Plus, you still feel you still feel like shit.
Right.
So it's not like what you're doing to get rid of those depressing and terrible, fearful thoughts is getting rid of the depression. It's just giving you the illusion that you can fix it. So you're really just living in suffering and depression. And fear, frantic fear of what's going on, right?
And the fear is the worst one for me.
Well, right, because I would have to say it's what you just said. I'm going to clarify. Is it the fear of fear, or is it fear?
Fear of fear. Yeah.
Right? That's how, because fear to me is like, all right, I can handle fear. It's when I'm afraid of the fear that I become extremely impulsive. Don't even look at it. Don't look at it. Right. You don't even know what's there, but because I can feel fear and I'm afraid of feeling fear, I'm going to do something fucking crazy. And you do. You end up being a weirdo. Super controlling, super critical, because you're trying to get rid of the fear you're afraid of. It basically magnifies fear exponentially when you're afraid of it. But when you look at fear from an actual physical feeling, there's so much you accept and live with that are far, far worse. Like, not that we accept nausea, but nausea. Nausea is horrible. You're not afraid of nausea. You just exist in it when it occurs and you think there's something wrong. But you're not like impulsive and with nausea. And nausea is 10 times worse, Even like, I recently sliced the tops of my fingers where the skin completely got cut through. That is easier than, pain. This type of pain to me is far, far easier than the fear of fear. Fear is just like, it is a physical sensation. Anxiety is a physical sensation. It's when we don't question it or look at where it's coming from because we're afraid of it. I think that's the biggest block. If I were a doctor prescribing anxiety medication, if I were a psychopharmacologist or a psychiatrist, can't remember which one, psychiatrist, I would ask about their fear of fear first before prescribing an anxiety pill. You know what I mean? Like, it's a big deal when people are afraid of those feelings because it makes it 10 times worse. And you start to have all of that panic, like a panic attack when you're afraid of fear. Right? Yes. I've had them. So I know what it feels like. Right? And that's why I was so it's bizarre, the weird things we do when we're in that space because we're trying to survive. We're just doing what our brain tells us to do, which is get out, leave, now, that impulsiveness. So, as you address first of all, we address what you're afraid of. It requires you go beyond the fear of fear, that you get inside the fear to open it up. As you experience your heart sweating, you go into what this is and you actually experience it. The key is not feeling sorry for yourself, because a lot of people get into that space, they feel sorry for themselves, and that's a defense mechanism. It's not working, I did
that for a little bit when Mick called me out. Like, he's such an asshole.
Yeah, poor me. I have to be responsible for being a dick. Once again, you sound probably like your mom or your dad. I know. And we say that in compassion for them. Because do they have any awareness of what's going on? Do they really? You have gone pretty far out to get this type of help, and your husband is not enabling it. So, think of what environment you're in that is now addressing and unraveling it. And you have to have compassion for your parents that do not have that environment at all.
Yeah.
In fact, their environment is
Yeah.
promoting this way of thinking, right? And so you can't
Yeah.
expect them to change. So you kind of just have to go, yeah, that's just how they function, their codependency way of thinking. And you just don't buy it. You just end up just going, okay, you don't buy it. You're not so rapidly running over to help them out when your mom is having a frantic panic attack. It's like she's in her hysterics, right? You don't buy it.
Yep.
She wouldn't if no one responded to her hysteria, would she still do it?
That's a really good question. I don't think so.
I know, right? Because that whole hysteria and victim positionality is a manipulative way to get attention and to try to control someone passively. It's just like,
yes.
I know, you've done it. Look at yourself when you do that. You can go, oh yeah, I'm trying to, even playing the victim role with him, I wanted him to feel bad. He's hurting me, so I'm going to hurt myself. Right? That's what you did with the food. So, because it's his fault. Yeah, I'm going to show him as I shove this 3 burgers in my mouth and blame him for being uncomfortable. And then I'm gonna go to Robin, and her hunger scale doesn't work. I know, it's just like, okay. But yeah, I mean, what we were talking about is going into the primal trigger, which isn't the food. It's actually not the dieting. We can look at that and go, well, yeah, that's triggering like serious like problems, but that's secondary to your fear of rejection, abandonment, disapproval, inferiority because of the narcissistic desire to be superior to survive. Right? Those are all, everything in it is self-centeredism, which is narcissism. That's how survival mode works. It's all self-preservation. Right? And you can look at that and go, well, what if there is no self-preservation? Well, then I'm going to die. Yes, you are. So let's go into dying. And what would happen if you could just be relieved of the suffering? Isn't it worth it? Yes.
Yeah.
So then let it go. The moment you apologize to your husband and you were sincere about it.
Yeah.
That right there, you were never taught to do that. Were you?
No.
Mm-hmm. You could have said, I read it in church. I heard about being, I read about it. I learned about it. I thought I knew what it was. I thought I was humble.
But I was wrong.
Right? No, this is what it feels like to have grace. Because in order for you to have admitted that to him, you've had to have grace for yourself and go, okay. I am doing the best I can with what I know, and he's right, and I can't afford to sit here and pretend that I'm not doing that because I am, because I see it clearly. And I am forgiving myself, giving myself grace to figure it out. And that's where, and then that humility to admit it to yourself. The thing with humility is that when you admit to yourself, the thing with humility is you're admitting something and you have grace with it as you admit it because your intentions aren't malicious. This I wish I could open up and dissect a little bit because how grace works is it can be seen as I'm so sorry and I'm such a sad person. No. I was having a conversation with someone yesterday. I will post that YouTube and Patreon today. That session about the difference between saying forgiving someone and actual grace. There's a huge difference. Do you know what that is?
Humility.
Yes. How'd you know? Did I guide that?
No, it just came into my head, and it's because of what happened between Nick and I had to be so humble and to be able to go to him and say, I could have went to him and said, I'm sorry, I was wrong, and the whole time think,
and I'm a bad person, and please forgive me. Okay, no.
Right.
Forgiveness to me, which is important because there's a different way to look at forgiveness as giving them give. That's grace. But when you, and this is really important for people who are victims, I forgive you is basically saying you did wrong.
Right.
That's not grace. That's not grace.
Yeah.
Even though it's clear as day, like molestation, stealing, backstabbing, dangerous, humans are dangerous, right? We can, it's easy to say you did wrong, but isn't that playing God? Right? Isn't that, there is a degree of I'm right, you're wrong. That is that kind of like, I'm right, you're wrong, and I forgive you because you're wrong. So that's not real forgiveness. So you can say, I forgive you, or I forgive you, but that's not the same as grace. Because what grace does is goes, well, relative to what they were experiencing and their point of view for what they were thinking and their belief structures, and they did the best they could under the circumstance, even if it was an impulsive thing that hurt others. Even if they were aware they were hurting others, they truly believed that there was something other than that was important they needed to get, right? So grace is like seeing it as what it is, and that we are aware that we don't understand fully, and then that person, there's a lot that we're unaware. So to go in there and say, well, they're wrong and I forgive them, that is very egocentric still.
Yep.
And it has downsides. So when people get to where I need to forgive people, well, that's still saying that you still think everybody's wrong. So you still think you're right. And so you are in the position of God forgiving everybody for their wrongdoings.
Right.
Does that make sense? So when I asked you what's the difference between forgiving someone and giving someone grace, it is the humility. The humility is what brings you down to say, we are all kind of doing the same thing, and I'm not aware when I do things crazy, and I'm pretty sure they're not aware of the whole picture, and they don't understand it either. So I'm just going to give them grace of their own situation. It's not my job to sit there and tell them they've done wrong and that I forgive them. Like they need me to say, you're okay.
Right. And what they probably really need is for me to ask for their forgiveness for being
judge your pants.
Yes.
Well, and you can just say, hey, I can understand this is something that is, so I say a lot, this is forgivable. That forgivability means that there is grace, which means there is a degree of humility in the fact that we all suck.
Yep.
Without knowing it, without our awareness of it. You know, we are animals on the planet with these animal instincts, self-preservation ego, the narcissistic core of the ego, which is promoting yourself and putting others below you, that exists in our primal wiring. And it takes quite a bit of evolution to not be controlled by it.
Yeah.
You know, and to be aware or in a position to where it doesn't even affect you. You know?
Yep. Yeah. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I say that as I have someone in my life that I literally am like, she's a bitch. I'm not going to talk to her anymore. You know?
Yep.
There I am. She's wrong. She's wrong. And I'm right.
When I start talking like that, my husband always says, just calm down a minute.
You need to take a break. You know what I say is check your stuff. You need to check yourself. That's what I say to my kids. You need to check yourself right now. Just.
I'm going to put that on my computer.
Check yourself. And really what that means is get oriented around what is going on. You know, give yourself a bubble of distance before you keep on doing what you're doing. Think. Take a deep cleansing breath. Serenity now. Serenity now! It's my Seinfeld quote.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I love being out of survival mode, and really that's what this is. This space and this distance and this breathing room is like, oh, I'm not in sketchy animal mode. Oh, it's wonderful. It's like we grow up in a culture that thrives on survival mode. So and the weird thing is the capitalism around it. Survival mode has been capitalized on. And It's like when you watch all of these like commercials for weight loss, for example, or diets, it's all like, we can get you out of survival mode. But, the sucky part about it is when it comes from outside of yourself, you will never leave survival mode because you're not surviving within your own capacity. You're reliant on something, whether it's religion, whether it's your, how much money you make, the type of car you drive, your new fake eyelashes, your spray tan, whatever it is that you're attaching survival to. I'm not saying you can't enjoy those things or have fun with those things. It's just if you're using those things to feel fulfilled, you will never escape survival mode because it's, from my personal experience and from the experience I've witnessed in guiding other people through this, is the key to getting out is feeling that you are capable. Even if you suck, that's the key, two key things that need to be paired together. It's the humility of recognizing that we're human and you're going to die. People aren't going to like you. You're going to be rejected. You're going to be alone. So that truly is the key security you need to find is, okay, if I am alone, can I survive? And that sense of capacity, and they talk about feeling competent in oneself is actually fundamental to self-esteem. The key is that you feel competent even with inadequacy. Even if I'm insufficient in tools, even if I don't have what I need, do I have capacity to do the best I can? And is that good enough for me? So once you get that self-reliance, autonomy, independence, those are all words to describe it, that doesn't rely on, I have to have this tool to survive. Well, we can say, yes, of course, it would be a lot easier if I had a knife, if I had water, if I had all those bare necessity things. But in the end, if you can adapt, if you're adaptable, that's how we discover new instruments. The key is adaptable to survival alone. Once someone feels that way, it's like all of a sudden their connections with other people become easy and loose and not demanding, and there's no codependency. You're no longer controlling. You're not controlling your environment. You're not controlling other people, because controlling this comes from that need to survive within yourself and the idea that you need the environment to be what it needs to provide you safety. That's not survival, even though there's an illusion of survival. It's going into, I can be in any environment and do the best I can, and I'm going to die or I'm not. So there's like these, I think that's a syndrome. It's what we should be calling it is survival syndrome.
Yeah.
It's like, do you feel you can handle your environment? Do you feel that you can adapt to any environment? Do you feel that you are okay dying? Are you okay? There's all these little parts to getting out of it. And in the case of like an eating disorder, you have to be okay with completely being alone in isolation without human contact, because that's the ultimate fear behind it all.
Mm-hmm.
And be okay if it means you are no longer a slave to constantly trying to find people so you're not alone.
Right.
I don't know if I communicated that very well. I really am working. I'm trying to get it easy to understand. But
I got an email yesterday that it talked about they're going to do a class for I don't know, something like hormones or essential oils or something like that, and it played into that you are not okay unless you have this tool to make yourself okay. And it's so easy to get well, it used to be a lot easier to get sucked into that. Oh, I should try that. But now I'm able to see it, and I'm like, no.
Well, you just don't take it as serious. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing wrong with essential oils or taking aspirin or even taking ibuprofen or using a Band-Aid or, you know, getting firewood and matches. And, you know, I have food storage but at the same time, it's like, but I'm not afraid to die. So, you know, you do what you can with your intelligence, but at the same time, you live life fully. You know, there's a balance, right? Between, you know, taking care of what needs to be taken care of, like going to the doctor and, you know, you have the rheumatoid arthritis. It's like, well, always be aware you're okay with death. I know that sounds so morbid, but that's the ultimate trigger to survival syndrome or mode. And then be lenient around what you're willing to do to prevent it.
Right.
You know, and to reduce your own physical pain. You know, when I sliced my fingers open, I chose not to get stitches, and instead I'd use butterfly Band-Aids. Why would I do that? Well, I don't want to get an infection. And I want it to close.
Yeah.
You know, so I tolerated a degree more pain because I didn't, or, you know, it maybe would have been better to get stitches. But to me, it was like, well, I just sliced the tips of my finger. Do I really want a needle going through them? In and out, and in and out, and in and out, and in and out. No, I'm totally fine if I just use, but do you see how it's like, I used hydrogen peroxide. I did put a little bit of antibiotic ointment on it. All of that is to prevent death, if you want to call it that, and suffering. But it didn't affect my psychological fear of mirrors, because that's what sliced my finger, is a cut mirror. You know? Whoops, oh well, I'm alive. I guess I have cut fingers.
It's kind of like, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but working through that...
I can hardly hear you. Hold on. It sounds like you're talking in like a bowl or something. I can't hear.
Okay. Is this better?
To say that again.
It's kind of like when I really struggled with walking for weight loss versus walking because it helps my back and just my general well-being.
Yeah, totally different. One is extrinsic and emotionally driven, and the other one is intrinsic, like brushing my teeth. I don't brush my teeth so people think my teeth are white. I brush my teeth because it prevents cavities. It prevents damage. I like the feeling of clean teeth and clean breath. So it's something that I do because it actually is beneficial to me. I'm not doing it to benefit someone else's approval of me.
Right.
So, it changes the dynamics of your motivation and your behavior with the activity you're doing. So for me, yoga is not about flexibility as much as it's about pain relief. So I don't go in there and think, how flexible am I today? I know you're laughing because a lot of people, it's competitive. It's like, I'm going to change my body. I'm going to, because it's not good enough. Well, hold on a second. Is that yoga or is that eco yoga? Yeah.
Right.
And you know what? I'm not going to judge that, because to some people that is an aspect of getting to yoga, is doing it in a way that they don't get the necessary benefit of the whole picture, but they might need to do it that way to get there. Right.
Right.
Again, it's like how you got here is through incredible toxic behavior with dieting, with body image, and with food. And here we are.
Yep.
So why judge the path to awareness when we all suffer in it?
Yep.
So, but I will say, I've been that way with exercise, and it was extremely toxic and it was very damaging. And I have to say, I do believe that the back issues I have today are residual from that time.
Yeah.
So I do yoga, for the love of my body. And if it's in pain, it's in pain, and I don't feel bad about it. It's just, it is what it is. And I always try to create a relative abundance around the fact that I'm so fortunate.
Yeah, because I can still do almost everything that I would like to do.
Yeah, exactly.
And I can still do everything I need to do.
Yeah.
Which there's a big difference between those two.
Yes, and if you couldn't, so go into if you couldn't do either of those, don't you agree, if the damage was irreparable, you would adapt. Like, if my legs got cut off, of course I wouldn't be able to take my dogs for a walk in the foothills. I would adapt somehow.
Yep.
I would adapt.
Yep. It is what it is.
Yeah, and so I can adjust around that limitation to where it's not a limit anymore. It's only a limitation relative to what I used to be able to do. So when I get rid of, when I grieve in the loss of that, I create a new normal that is not limited relative to what I'm capable with my current situation. Think of all the capacity you have with your current situation. So this is like relative disability, right? So of course you're disabled when you are not capable of doing what you used to do. But when you accept where you're at, you're now abled to do what you're capable of today. So you're no longer disabled because you're no longer holding yourself to an ability that is not possible.
Yes.
It's relative ability.
Yes.
Yeah, relative disability and relative ability. This is an actual conversation I've written about in a chapter in the one of the chapters in the book Thin Supremacy that I'm writing that won't be published for probably another year. But I talk about relative disability and ability. It's freaking heavy reading. But
I can't wait though.
Yeah, well, don't get your hopes up because right now it's terrible.
Well, it says who?
Ugh. This is me and my editor. She's so good. I love her so much. I have the most amazing editor. If any of you are writing a book, I have an incredible editor. She's going to retire soon. She's been doing this for over 40 years, and she is amazing. Amazing.
Wow.
She is not just editing. She is like, Robin, I couldn't even stand reading this. This was horrible. I'm like, I love you so much. Thank you. Oh, my God. I needed to hear that. She's so good. Wouldn't you want that feedback?
Oh, yeah.
Me too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I love her. So, yeah. Anyways. Huge. You're kicking ass. The biggest thing that, to me, there's a few big moments. It's how you responded to your weight. How you've responded to your husband.
Yeah.
That one is the biggest one to me. That's more an indication of why you don't respond to the weight.
Yeah.
The humility of it all is like, that's where grace exists. And where 249, he was like, well, I should just see what happens. That's grace right there.
Yep.
It's not, oh my God, I'm such a piece of shit, but I have to forgive myself. No. Mm-mm.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh my God. Huge. Humongous. Yeah. So I am really, really curious, and I want you to be too, and I think you already are, but about how just allowing the body to heal itself as it should and under the influence of what the doctors are doing with you.
Yeah. I'm extremely curious to see how my body responds the next few months.
I really do think you might want to call that doctor and tell them, I didn't tell you this, but I have made dramatic changes to the way I'm thinking about my life. And so that I want you to know that my main focus has been stress relief and reducing the cause of my stress.
Yeah, I will do that because it's definitely a huge piece of this puzzle that they need to know about.
Yeah, well, and that you used to binge eat, you used to have extreme dieting, and that was a huge cause.
Yep.
You know, and to be able to say I'm not dieting anymore. I don't feel bad about my weight anymore, and I'm taking the steps to heal my self-esteem and blah blah blah. They need to hear that.
Yep, I agree. Especially, they are very unconventional Like, you know, they told me, you need to go to a chiropractor regularly. You need to go get massage therapy. You need to, like, some doctors you go to, you know, they're like, why are you on to a chiropractor? So he's very open to, you know, and I told him, I'm going to do a round of HCG, and he said, go for it. Not this time. That was the time that I did it, and I flared so bad.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he needs to know this, and
well, just as because he's practicing and they need feedback, and especially when it comes to how they're doing this work for you, and just to be able to say, hey, I just want you to know, I didn't mention this, but my stress has been greatly reduced.
And it may help other patients. Like, it may help them be better doctors to other patients.
Yeah. And if you're, yes, I believe that. You know, give them the feedback to say, I really, really have honed in on this, and this could be why my numbers were so normal.
Yep.
Good. I'm not causing damage with my own thoughts.
They were just shocked. But there's like, we don't
see, you and I, are you shocked? Because I'm not shocked.
No, I really wasn't shocked. I was like, okay.
Yeah, well, okay. we kind of came to this conclusion when you were on your last round. I was like, clearly it's not the food, and clearly it isn't your age, it isn't your weight.
Yep.
So there's only one other thing that it could be. All right, I gotta go. Will you message me with times that will work with you in the next month?
Yep, I will do that. I was gonna say I want to go 30 to 45 days. So yep, I'll message you.
I agree. All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye, Robin.
All right, bye-bye.
Wireless. Your call cannot